Welcome back to another City Skylines 2 development diary. Today, we'll look at the public and freight transit choices accessible to you as you design your own city. If you want to see more of it, just follow the channel for free now and I'll keep you updated. A city's functioning public transportation system is an essential component of its inner workings. Citizens in a new city may be transported by buses and taxis, and as the city expands, you can invest in various transportation systems such as tram and subway networks. Passenger trains can also service local traffic if you are ready to sacrifice construction area for huge railway stops. Buses, trains, ships, and aircraft carry passengers between cities, bringing new inhabitants and tourists to your city. Buses employ road connections, but trains must be connected between the city and the existing train infrastructure on the map. Ships are particularly beneficial on maps with huge open waterways connected to the map's edge, whereas aircraft connect the city to the rest of the globe via an airport. Transportation also involves cargo transport, in which businesses order resources via delivery trucks and vans. To help local businesses and commercial firms, you may build up freight lines that use trains, ships, and aircraft to keep the wheels of industry going. Types of public transport. Buses are the first to unlock and constitute the backbone of the city's public transportation network in the early game. They are a tried-and-true system that is inexpensive and adaptable, despite being heavily influenced by metropolitan traffic. Buses require frequent repair at the bus depot and come in two varieties: regular fuel-powered buses and ecologically friendly electric buses. To deploy electric buses in your city, you will need to upgrade the bus depot. Buses may transport customers from outside connections as well as locals, and after the bus depot is built, you can develop intercity bus routes. Intercity buses can either stop at the bus terminal or drop off and pick up passengers at one or more normal bus stops. Taxis are common in most places, including in City Skylines 2. Taxis work similarly to personal cars, transporting people to their destinations, and in the early game, taxis also bring new inhabitants to the city who do not have their own personal vehicle. Taxis are an incredibly flexible kind of public transportation since they do not require lines to function. However, they have a poor capacity, contribute to traffic congestion, and are hampered by it. Taxis require the taxi depot for maintenance. However, until the taxi depot is upgraded, taxis may only pick up customers from the taxi stand. With the dispatch center overhaul, there are no restrictions on picking up fares in the city. The taxi service may be increased by replacing certain taxis with electric taxis, which will reduce noise and air pollution generated by the service. This is accomplished by modifying the taxi depot to handle electric taxis as well. Trains transport vast numbers of passengers and freight, and while their infrastructure makes them more suited for transcontinental travel, they may also be utilized locally. To establish railway lines, you must first construct a rail yard, which sends out and maintains your trains, and connect it to the rails. Trains, by definition, require tracks to travel on, and creating a railway infrastructure is an expensive initial investment, but due to their transit capacity, trains more than make up for the original cost over time. Train infrastructure allows you to build two-way and double tracks, as well as one-way train tracks, elevated tracks, bridges, tunnels, and cut-and-fill lines that run below ground level. Trains and other rail transports can drive backwards and forwards, allowing them to use track switches made by merging two-way and double train lines. Stations also include pre-built tracks that generate track switches automatically when tracks are linked to them, regardless of track type. When it comes to developing the public transportation network in a growing city, trams are a rather flexible light rail alternative. Tram tracks can be added to already made roads using the replace tool, or they can be created separately, running on the terrain and so skipping other traffic entirely. A tram depot, which dispatches and maintains the tram fleet, is essential to establish a tram network. The initial cost of establishing a tram network is higher than that of establishing a bus fleet, but trams are quiet and do not pollute the air. Trams may be created in the same way as roads and railway tracks are. They have one-way tracks and double tram tracks, as well as elevated tracks, bridges, cut-and-fill tracks, and tunnels. Subway is a quick, high-capacity local public transportation service. The initial investment in rapid transit infrastructure is substantial, but because of its quickness, it is a popular mode of transportation for many residents who value their time while conducting pathfinding calculations. While the subway can be built above ground and even on elevated lines, its main attraction is how little space it takes up when built below. The subterranean stop entry is fairly tiny. It fits perfectly between the other buildings without taking up much room. The subway, like railroads, requires a subway yard to feed trains to the lines. Subway trains run on dedicated tracks, and passengers can board from both subterranean and overground stops. And, like with other forms of rail, you may construct double subway tracks and one-way tracks, as well as elevated and cut-and-fill tracks, bridges, and tunnels. Water transportation includes both passenger and freight possibilities. Ships can convey a large number of passengers both within the city and to and from outside connections. Intercity water transport necessitates access to the map's boundaries via seaways and linking harbors to these seaways. Air transportation is a quick intercity alternative for both passengers and freight. When compared to ships and railways, aircraft carry less people and cargo, but they make up for it in speed. Airports require a lot of space to be created, with the international airport being the size of a small town. Depending on how many air transport lines are built, they can also produce a lot of traffic between the city and the airport. When you place an airport, you can see the projected landing and takeoff zones at the extremities of the structure, giving you an idea of where the constraints to designated building heights are applied. Aside from airports, no more infrastructure is required for air transportation routes. The airports are linked to the outside connections using the line tool, and the planes begin flying on the lines as they are constructed. Cargo types. In addition to delivery vehicles and vans, freight trains form the backbone of land resource transportation. Companies can utilize a cargo train terminal to store arriving and departing cargo once it is established. Even without freight lines, corporations ordering resources can utilize the station's storage facilities to drop off and pick up resources and commodities, thus acting as a distribution hub. To begin receiving cargo trains, you must first establish a freight train line, which works similarly to passenger train lines. Trains then transport materials from outside connections to the terminal, where they are held until local delivery vehicles pick them up for distribution inside the city. Similarly, businesses transport their goods to the terminal since it is less expensive and faster to convey items by rail than to haul them to the outside connections by vehicle. Due to the high number of materials transferred to and from the terminal, there may be a lot of truck traffic. To minimize traffic bottlenecks, it is critical to prioritize the road connections to the port. Goods ships can transport massive amounts of goods, up to 1,000 tons. They are slower than trains, but are not slowed by heavy traffic on the roads. Freight harbors, like freight railway stations, can store resources and products for later distribution. Cargo harbors can produce a lot of traffic as delivery trucks unload cargo ships and transport commodities into the city. Furthermore, the cargo harbor may be improved with a railway link, allowing trains to move cargo straight to and from the harbor. Air freight transport becomes possible when the airport is renovated with a cargo terminal, which provides an extra terminal solely for cargo transport where cargo planes may pick up and offload their goods. Freight planes have a lower capacity than freight trains and ships, but they are the quickest choice and are not affected by city traffic or depending on accessible waterways. New gameplay with transportation lines. In city skylines, only buses, taxis, and trams had depots. Once a route was established, trains and subway trains sprang immediately from the stops. Each land-based public transportation mode in city skylines 2 includes a depot or yard where cars are spawned and maintained. Each depot can support a certain number of vehicles, which may be increased with appropriate construction modifications. The line tool functionality has been standardized to allow a more easy gaming loop between all of the numerous transportation choices, including both passenger and freight transit. To develop transportation lines for land-based vehicles, you must first construct the right vehicle depot, then stations and track. Buses have generally used pre-existing road networks with stops, but you may also establish highways expressly for public transportation vehicles such as buses, as well as priority lanes on existing roadways. After placing the stops and stations and connecting them with roads and tracks, you may build transit routes between them. When drawing lines for road-based vehicles in City Skylines 2, the line tool is more versatile. When establishing a bus line, you may include waypoints that regulate the route the bus takes from stop to stop, allowing it to avoid crowded highways or junctions. The same stops and stations may support additional lines, however the increased number of cars may cause considerable congestion. Harbors, like railroad stations, must be linked to seaways using the Seaway tool. Following that, you may establish ship lines that go between the city and the outside connections or between harbors in your city. Airports are immediately connected to outside connections using the airplane line tool, eliminating the need for any other networks. In City Skylines, each mode of transportation was unlocked by attaining certain population milestones. This resulted in identically designed cities because each option was always accessible at the same moment, regardless of whether the player needed to utilize them or not. With the exception of buses and taxis, which unlock with milestone progression in City Skylines 2, each transportation type is unlocked via development points in the Transportation Development Tree. More on development points in a later development diary. You may choose which modes of transportation your city need and unlock them to fulfill your idea of the best metropolis on the planet. A global view of transportation. The Transportation Info View collects all important information concerning both passenger and freight transportation, which is divided into two categories. The passenger transportation data covers the number of lines in the city, as well as the number of tourists transported and the total number of people transported by transport type in a month. The number of cargo lines is displayed in the cargo section of the Info View panel. The panel also provides the volume of goods moved in tons each month and per mode of transport. Furthermore, the Transportation Info View displays all of the city's lines as well as plainly visible symbols for all of the transport vehicles, giving you a complete image of where and how many vehicles are now moving. The Transportation Overview panel contains information on all transportation lines, which are organized into two primary categories, passenger and freight transportation, which are further subdivided into transport kinds. The panel provides a rapid summary of the most relevant features of each line at a glance. In the Overview panel, lines may be renamed, active, and deactivated, and their distinguishing color can be altered. By selecting the Line Specifics button, you may view the specifics of each line. This brings up the Line panel, where you may make further alterations. The Overview screen is quite useful, especially when reviewing the line utilization percentages when optimizing the various transit kinds. The Line panel displays information about the lines, such as their length, number of stops, and present passengers, as well as their line utilization percent. A line may also be renamed in the panel, and you can change car models per line if other alternatives are available. In the Line panel, you can also fine-tune the functionality of a transit line. For public transportation lines, the options include ticket price, number of vehicles on the route, and operation hours, day, night, or both day and night. You can change the number of cars and the operation hours for freight lines. The price of a ticket influences citizens' pathfinding computations. Citizens pick their travel options based on time, comfort, and money, and while time and comfort are key factors, money can sway them between public transit and private car use. Changing the number of cars on a line is an excellent strategy to respond to changing traffic patterns as the city expands. If a line becomes exceptionally popular, i.e. its utilization percentage approaches 100%, increasing the number of cars might relieve pressure and cut passenger wait times at stops and stations, affecting their pathfinding computations as well. Adjusting the vehicle numbers per line ensures that the depot's fleet is utilized properly and that there are enough cars to go around. That's all we got for you today. We hope that this development diary has given you an idea of how to include public and freight transportation into City Skylines 2. What is your preferred mode of public transportation? And are you looking forward to having more control over your freight lines? Tell us in the comments and of course subscribe to the channel. Make sure to come back next week since we'll be exploring the guts of the city, zones, and signature buildings.